Today we have torn apart on the workbench a 1940s little wooden cased Decca 78 RPM record player. And yes, you have seen this record player in another video. It's one that I'm repairing for someone. And in the last video we serviced the little one-tube amplifier, got it back in tip-top shape. But there were a couple of problems that we ran into that we want to address. The first problem is this pickup arm. Now, this is the original pickup arm that was attached to the record player. And as you can see, there's no kind of counterweight or counterbalance spring to lighten the tracking pressure. And the only way I could have accomplished that is by making the tone arm look tacky, and we don't want to do that. I believe in the first video we measured this and it clocked in at around 90 grams. Well, that's so heavy that even when you remove the original crystal cartridge and add a modern cartridge, the tone arm still tracks too heavy for the modern cartridge. So the only options were either to have this original cartridge rebuilt at a cost of about $50, or install another tone arm that can be adjusted. Well, the owner of this thing really didn't like the idea of playing his 78s at such heavy tracking forces, and also $50 to have this cartridge rebuilt, plus other things that I'll discuss in a few minutes, sort of made it prohibitive to fix this thing. So what did I do? Well, I had this old cheap kid's Webcore record player from the early 50s that the case was pretty much shot on, and it had this nice metal tone arm that actually looks kind of period correct for this record player. This one has a counterbalance spring attached to it, and it has one of those 89T PowerPoint holders to hold a plug-in cartridge. It's designed to track at around 6 to 8 grams. And, you know, we can adjust this counter spring for that pressure, no problem. So, yeah, I think he would like that idea a lot better, you know, playing his records at 6 to 8 grams versus 90 grams. And I've already sent him a picture of this tone arm, and he's cool with this tone arm being mounted on this record player. And should he ever decide to go back to the original, well, it can be done. The second problem is this speaker. Now, this is a nice old Magnavox permanent magnet speaker, but as you can see, the cone is shot. And there again, I could send this speaker off and have it rebuilt, but by the time you factor in the cost of having it reconed and the shipping both ways, you're looking at another $50, which there again is just adding to the cost of this. And so I had this newer PM speaker that came out of a console stereo that I junked, and I ran it past the owner, and he says he's perfectly okay with using a newer speaker in this unit. So what I will do is I will dismount the audio output transformer from this speaker and mount it to the replacement speaker. And once again, down the road, if he decides he wants to have the original speaker reconed, we can do that. But the object of the game here is to get the record player playing without having to spend hundreds of dollars on it. And if we went the route of having this speaker reconed, plus having this cartridge rebuilt, plus having the idler wheel rebuilt on the drive mechanism, which is something we may have to do anyway, plus the parts and labor involved for fixing the amplifier and other things, it could easily run this up to a $200+ repair job, and you know, in my opinion, that's a little excessive. So, you know, I'm all about saving people money, so if he's okay with me using a different tone arm and a newer speaker, then that's wonderful. We can fix this a lot cheaper. Okay, we now have our slightly more modern tone arm mounted in place. Now we'll deal with the speaker. Here's the speaker that we're going to use, and we'll need to remove the output transformer from this speaker and carefully mount it to this speaker, and then install everything back in the cabinet. Okay, here we are, connected all up on the workbench for a temporary amplifier test. As you might hear from the mechanics, we still haven't addressed those issues yet, but we have our amplifier connected, and I made another change here. Originally, the tone arm lead was hardwired to the amplifier. Now, I don't like that. I like things to be unpluggable for easy service, so we took care of that with an RCA jack. I really don't expect this speed to be consistent, but we can at least test it for audio quality. And by the way, this is an older cartridge that's in here. The stylus is not too great, but I have a nice fresh 78 RPM cartridge coming from the Voice of Music website. As soon as the post office figures out what 2-day priority mail really means, I think to most people a day is 24 hours, but to the post office a business day is like 72 hours at least. Okay, let's see what we have here. Well, like I said, the speed is kind of inconsistent. Okay, another issue we might have to face with this amplifier is this original cartridge was a 3-volt cartridge driving the output stage directly. This static 89T is only 1.3 volts, which means it doesn't drive the amp as hard as what originally was in there, which ultimately means you have to crank the volume up higher to get the same amount of sound, and we just have to play around with it. If we need to get more audio from this amplifier, we can add a preamp stage, which what I usually do there is just drill another hole in the chassis and add something like a 6AV6 tube, and that will give us plenty of gain for this amplifier to work with this lower output cartridge. Here's the rubber idler wheel that's totally hosed up. You can see it has a big dimple in it right there. And I could send this off and have it rebuilt, which I might do, but first I'm going to entertain the possibility of using a rubber O-ring to replace the rubber tire on this wheel. You know, whenever it costs $30-something to have a wheel rebuilt versus an O-ring that probably costs less than $1 at the hardware store, which option do you think we're going for? But we'll save the mechanics for this video, or the mechanics of this record player, for the next video. So far we have our amplifier. The only other thing we might possibly need to do to the amplifier is add that preamp stage that I discussed earlier. But then again, this might actually produce enough volume on its own without having to add the preamp stage, but that will be determined later. Okay, for now I'll say thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of all of this, and I'll be back shortly.